it's at least as exciting. Norm Rothschild. Give credit where it is due. Sports promoter Norm Rothschild took Syracuse to the big leagues in boxing. He was the man who in 1951 set up and ran the Arena Boxing Club, an organization to bring some big bouts to the Salt City, and he did. Carm Basilio, the linchpin in most of them, the headliner in many of them. You already know of Carm's World Championship achievements, outlined and saluted here just a year ago. 11 years, the club put on 75 programs, 56 of which were nationally televised. Norm is credited with getting the Friday night fights on national TV. I can remember Gillette Presents, and it was Good Evening Fans, Jimmy Powers, and then the analyst was Bill Coram, who would always say, well, it wasn't a particularly interesting round, and then he'd go on to say why it was. Just 2 years ago, a lot of us were privileged to be part of some more history where Norm Rothschild is concerned, when he was saluted by the Boxing Writers Association of America. Their top award, given to a non-journalist, that was an association first, it still is. And if it were his decision alone to make the Hambletonian Harness Racing Classic, the Trotting Classic would be back here out at the fairgrounds where it began. We honor Norman E. Rothschild.
The sponsor for the induction of Normie is Lincoln Group Limited. Bud Wertheimer, president, will make the presentation. And to accept for Norm, we're delighted to have this evening his lovely wife, Ada. Ada, if you'll come up here with Bud.
This is a special occasion for both of our families. With my dad, Al, being inducted in later, if there is a later, and our very, very close friend, Norm, receiving this honor. It's just a very, very special night for us. We've, many of us here have known Norm, or knew Norm, in many ways, as a restaurateur, as a friend, as a businessman, and, but always it seemed was the association with boxing. And I think it's really nice that we all have a friend like Norm, because with so many things, stones being thrown at boxing from time to time, I've always felt that Norm really represented what was really good about the sport, and particularly in a very, very difficult arena in fight promoting. Naturally, I'm terribly saddened that Norm is not here to enjoy the accolades of so many of his friends and so many people that have meant so much to him. But at least I'm proud to have the opportunity to present this picture to you, for the kids, Barbara, Claire, and of course the apple of your eye, Arnie. My congratulations, David.
I think I need a soapbox here. I would like to say a few words about Norm, if I can. Boxing was not a job to him. It was a labor of love. Our daughter Claire summed it up pretty well for me yesterday. She said, Norm loved his wife, his children, and boxing, but we're not sure in what order. He was a young man from upstate New York who went to the city looking for TV fights for Syracuse, and he was turned down. When he came home feeling low about the outcome, he often reminded me that I told him, it's okay, Norm, someday they'll come looking for you. That prophecy came true. He promoted 56 nationally televised fights, most of them in Syracuse, 9 closed circuit, and 10 without benefit of TV. After the first show, the press, managers, fighters, and everyone involved were so impressed with the treatment they received. They were picked up at the airport, their rooms and seating accommodations taken care of, and after the event, a party for them to go to. Then they were taken back to the airport for their return flights. These details were rarely taken care of in other cities, and it made Norm look and feel good. He became one of the best box office men in the business. He could tell you what a show would draw, so everyone knew where they stood, and he rarely was wrong. Our children had to learn to roll with the punches at an early age, and therefore I know he would want you to meet them. Barbara, Arnold, and Claire, please stand up and be recognized. I'm happy that Al Grabowski and Johnny DeJohn are here tonight. Al was treasurer of the Arena Boxing Club, and Johnny, everybody knows, was Carmen Basilio's manager and also the Fighting DeJohn brothers. They gave us some very exciting times here in Syracuse. In the 46 years I had with this very special man, there was never a dull moment. Besides boxing, he promoted all-star hockey, baseball expositions, water show, Ringling Brothers, and many other theatrical shows. His word was his bond. He promoted a heavyweight fight in Rochester, and the fight wasn't as good as he expected. In conversation with George Bean, a newspaper man from up there, he said, "George, it wasn't a very good fight, was it?" And George agreed with him. Then Norm said, "Well, if anyone didn't think they got their money's worth, I'll refund it to them." He didn't think George was going to run that story in his column, and Norm got an awful lot of requests for refunds. He made the statement, and he stood by what he said. That wasn't good promotion, but that was Norm. Thank you, David Weatherup, for nominating Norm, and thank you for honoring him with so many of his good friends here tonight in the city he loved and he never wanted to leave. Thank you.
Ninth one, this is a great way to round it out because this is quite a guy. Well, they all are. Al Wertheimer, pound for pound. Albert Wertheimer is considered by many who should know to be the best boxer ever to come out of Syracuse University. And some of us at least got in on the end of those halcyon days and can appreciate what an achievement, what a compliment that is. The Orange had some good ones. Al Wertheimer at 125 pounds, described by AP writer Ed Neal. There's a prestigious award annually named after him for his contributions to the sport. Ed Neal said, quote, "Al is as well-schooled, as polished, and stiff a puncher as any of his weight in the country, in or out of the college amateur ranks," end quote. Al went undefeated in his 3 varsity seasons at Syracuse, winning the intercollegiate weight class crown 3 times in the process, eventually being declared the all-time best in his weight class by the Coaches Association. His NCAA honors was a Syracuse first, that is, the first ever individual athlete to win a national title from Syracuse, and he just missed making the 32 Olympics. Most of us today know Al Wertheimer as a solidly successful business entrepreneur with some serious involvement in the broadcasting industry. Again, though, that really is just part of the picture. You see some more of the pictures on the screen. He credits his sport for helping him attain success. The rigid training, the dedication, the perseverance, and a deep respect, he says, for my fellow man, friend, or foe. Al Wertheimer.
And what better sponsor for Al Wertheimer than the Varsity Club of Syracuse University? The executive director of that organization, Joe Zombathy, is here, and Joe will make the presentation to Al.
Thank you very much. Albert, it's been a great relationship. 40 years that you've been associated with the Varsity Club of Syracuse University. You have been really the cornerstone of our success. No one has worked harder, put more hours in to help us come where we are. We are the alumni letter winners club of the university, and you have helped us get 1,400 active members. Besides that, your efforts, your tireless efforts, brought about the Letter Winners of Distinction Award and Banquet, which is in our 24th year. Al, you are so deserving of this award because you have been a cornerstone of the Central New York and city of Syracuse ever since you got out of college. I recall a story that you came to Syracuse with a nickel in your pocket, and you are truly a success story. And that came about because of hard work, energy, dedication. You are a loyal alumnus of Syracuse University, of whom we are extremely proud. And it gives me a great deal of pleasure and a privilege to present you with this award. And I do this also for your lovely wife and the family, Dorothy, sitting down there.
Ladies and gentlemen, I guess that's the way to start it. And if I go too long, they've told me that I'll be removed from the dais here, one way or another. My first sensation upon receiving the news of this great honor, this great award, was pride. Pure, unadulterated, egotistical pride. I'm especially proud to be up here with these four big hitters that are spread across this table. But I want to make note of the posthumous other four that are gone, but they're really here. Now for me, it's a long time back to be remembered. 55 years ago, that's a long time. I think of my last fight and that long, lonesome walk down the aisle from the dressing room to the ring. What a memory those people on the selection committee must have. Their grandpas must have told them about me. I've been lucky all my life. Hope to stay that way. But 60 years ago, an old boy, Tom Keene, he had been an Olympic track coach and from Syracuse. He saw me box one night at the Madison Square Garden in New York. He must have liked it all right. I had a good night against a tough guy. So he went back to Syracuse and told Roy Simmons, Coach Simmons, about me. They proceeded to smuggle me into Syracuse University. And 4 years later, I came out with an engineering degree, no less. But catch this, all for free. How do you like that? Now, I love Lady Luck, and she is the first I want to pay tribute to tonight. She taught a tough game. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And then there are others I want to pay tribute and remember because I owe them. There was a great man who found me back in Buffalo. His name was Jimmy Goodrich. He was a professional boxer. He was the world's lightweight champion at the time. He took me under his wing, and I became his first and only protege. Lucky me. And in those early years, he had me train with many masters and champions of that day. I was taught the fine skills by the great professionals of the game. How much do I owe Jimmy Goodrich? I don't know, but how lucky can I get? Then came Syracuse, the university, and Roy Simmons. The school gave me a fine education and opened the doors to a whole new world. And then Roy Simmons, one of the greatest men I've ever known. In the years with him, he taught a philosophy and attitude toward competition in life. It rubbed off on a lot of us. We call it the love of the win and the hate of the loss. I have reflections that might fit just now. They go something like this. The strongest moving force behind anything I've done has come primarily from my boxing career. The rigid training developed dedication and perseverance. The tough fights developed credibility and courage and a deep respect for my fellow man, friend or foe. And finally, I want to remember family. And Dottie and Jean, as much as everybody else has stood up, please do us the same thing. Are you still here? Now, this is quite an occasion, our family. Jeannie came up all the way from New York. I thought she'd have to hitchhike it, but she made it somehow. And I want to remember family. What a lot of family. What a lot of friends. What a lot of city, Syracuse. How lucky can I get? Thank you for listening.
William H. Big Bill Dinnean. It is a challenge, really, to put this man's playing career in some sort of perspective, but I'm going to try. 1903, the first ever World Series between the venerable National Baseball League, they'd started in 1976, and that upstart American League. They had begun 3 years earlier. In that first ever World Series, Bill Dinnean, pitching for the Boston Pilgrims, later Red Sox, won 3 games. A guy named Cy Young won 2 games. That's the Cy Young you're thinking of. As it is, the Sox won the series over Pittsburgh 5-3, and Bill pitched 2 shutouts. And in one particularly crucial situation, he struck out somebody named Honus Wagner. Might have been one of the better players ever. He didn't have a great series, but he was a Hall of Famer. Great series, really. Where Bill's name is also enshrined, and we know about that. His career began in the last century, a Syracuse Hall of Fame first. Bill played the game for 11 years, then went right into umpiring for the next 28 years. And he worked 8 World Series. He retired in 1937. When he came back home to Syracuse, he worked part-time at the old Moore and Quinn Brewery, one of several family breweries around our area, all of them unfortunately now gone. He died the evening of January 13, 1955, leaving an incredible legacy where the national pastime is concerned. And maybe just one more note on Bill Dinnean's durability as a pitcher. In 1904, with the Boston Red Sox, now he started and completed 37 games, compiling a record of 23 wins, 14 losses. William H. Big Bill Dinnean, a Syracuse Sports Hall of Fame inductee. He's quite a man.
And we're happy to have as the sponsor for the induction of the late Bill Dinnean, 3M Scotch Magnetic Media. Ron Gersbacher, who helped so much in the research, is going to make the presentation. And to accept for Bill Dinnean is his son, Charles Chuck Dinnean.
Thank you very much, Brad. I guess the story of Bill Dinnean kind of begins with the story of professional baseball in Syracuse. A few years ago, I started some research into looking into the history of professional baseball in Syracuse. Where did it start? In a few interviews I did, people thought it started in 1947 when Hank Sauer played for the Syracuse Chiefs. Then I got stories of the 1920s. Professional baseball first started in Syracuse in 1858. It was played as early as the 1830s, so we're talking about a sport that's been in existence for over 150 years. As I started my research into this project, as I got closer to the 1900s, I ran up into a team called the Shamrocks which were a West Side semi-pro baseball team. The pitcher and captain of that team was Bill Dinnean. Bill Dinnean and the Shamrocks won a numerous amount of city championships, followed by a tryout with the Syracuse Stars, who were the equivalent to the Syracuse Chiefs of their day. The tryout for the Stars was quoted as unsuccessful. The owner of the Stars, Mr. Kuntz, said, quote, "Bill Dinnean needs a little bit more experience." Shortly after, he joined a team called the Watsons of Weedsport, another semi-pro team, who happened that day to be playing against Toronto Maple Leafs in the same league as the Syracuse Stars, the old Eastern League. That day, Mr. Dinnean was signed immediately following his game to pitch for the Eastern League. The following spring, Mr. Dinnean came to Syracuse to pitch against the Syracuse Stars. And now this is a remarkable happening. I've never heard of this happening in the world of sports before. 10,000 people showed up at Old Star Park on South Salina Street, and they all rooted for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And fortunately for Mr. Dinnean, he did defeat the Stars that day. So the best thing I can describe as Bill Dinnean is he was a legend of the Syracuse baseball fans. The fans supported him, they loved him. The kids of the day, he was their Don Mattingly, if you want to put it in perspective of today. He was the man that the kids looked up to, and as the 1900s kept going, more and more semi-pro baseball teams appeared on the Syracuse scene as a result of the success of Bill Dinnean, who later went on, as Jack was saying, and had great success in the World Series. I'd just like to say a couple things. Bill Dutch and I go way back in this project together. I've been working on it for 3.5 years, going through thousands of hours of microfilm at the library, the Baseball Hall of Fame, the Historical Association. And following last year's dinner, I kind of looked at the great people that were inducted, and I said, hey, guys, what about baseball? What happened to baseball? Syracuse's oldest sport. And I submitted a whole pamphlet on the history of baseball and the 10 greatest baseball players, in my opinion, of the central New York area, and I submitted them to Bill, and I'm very happy and honored at the induction of Bill Dinnean, and I am very proud. This is one of the greatest moments that I've ever had, and I'm a loyal Syracuse Chiefs fan from way back, guys, and professional baseball is here, and let's keep it going. And this is a happy moment for me. I'd like to present this to Chuck Dinnean, a picture of his dad, is pictured as an umpire. Thank you very much.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for the tribute to my father and the association with this organization. My father really was a character in a way. He was a gourmet cook, the best amateur bartender that ever lived, and the world's worst horse player. Yeah. Anyhow, I'll mention the one record that has been brought up, 37 complete games and 37 starts. I think the main reason was because my father was a good athlete. He hit 208, which was pretty good for that time because 2 of the regulars hit under 215, so they didn't take him out for a pinch hitter. He stole 5 bases, very little, but based on number of times at bat, that was the best on the team. So they let him stay in even though there were frequently 8 or 9 runs made against him. But it's a record that'll hold up because, as I was kidding him about 40 years ago, every team has 4 or 5 relief pitchers now. Nobody's going to pitch 37 complete games, nobody. As an umpire, he was very fortunate because he was very friendly with the McAleers that ran the St. Louis team that he was pitching for. I think he was the only ball player that ever went in 1 week from a St. Louis uniform to wearing the umpire's garb the next week. I don't know how he got along with his own players in St. Louis, but I suppose he must have lived through it. A couple other anecdotes. I realize Ron Snyder, or Mr. Snyder, wrote a great article Monday and told most of this, but I'll mention the one anecdote I gave him. When he was umpiring, somebody threw the bat 40 feet in the air. And he said, if it comes down, you're out of the ball game. So the other I remembered as a pitcher, back in the old days, long before everybody's time here, you were not out if you didn't bunt. You were not out if you bunted foul on the third strike. So many batters that stand up there hold the bat up at the plate and let the ball tip off, and eventually get a walk theoretically. As a matter of fact, I can mention to you one of the preeminent ones of all was named O'Neill. This is about 1885, and he was that reason called Tip O'Neill, and that name has been taken by a host of O'Neills ever since. You all know, you know. Now, the other anecdote I wanted to mention about him, well, this is the same thing. There's one batter bunted about 12 or 14 foul tips in a row. And he said, one more foul ball and the next pitch is going in your ear. And this was the last foul ball that guy hit that guy anyhow. You know. So he was pretty vigorous on occasion. I think that story is authentic. It sounds so much like my father. You know. And he loved to talk about everything, but he didn't like to hear the name Clem or Cy Young, because Clem had more prestige as an umpire, and Cy Young won 500 in some games. So you skipped him when you talked. Skip those two when you talked to him. In retirement, he went and enjoyed Selkirk very much. Enjoyed Saratoga more, unfortunately. So I had a big time. Loved to have his drinks with his friends. Trying to think of the legacy you could say he left us. Two fair athletes and two clunks like me, and 4 very bad horse players, and also a great affinity for the Boston Red Sox, for whom we all root like mad. I will conclude by saying one thing. We may be stupid about playing the horses, but we never bet on the Red Sox.
And I hope you were impressed with Ron Gersbacher's deal about how he did it, because, again, that just speaks to what Bill had said, and if we're saying it can happen with your candidate, too. Next up, Chief Oren Lyons. Lacrosse is the sport. But for Oren Lyons, it is so much more. This was the way he could make his mark. Let us all know who he is, and he certainly made that mark. Still doing it in a way. Oren Lyons grew up with the sport on the Onondaga Nation Reservation, where box lacrosse has been a lifelong tradition. Some of us got excited when they built that new box in back of the then recently constructed new fire station, I remember, and we know of that tradition. Oren Lyons made his mark at Syracuse University, an All-American goalkeeper, a co-captain, winner of the Orange Key Award in 1958 as the top Syracuse University senior athlete in any sport. Co-captain that year, too. Played for and with Roy Simmons Sr. and Jr., respectively. These days, he is recognized nationally as a Native American leader, traveling internationally at times. How about this? He'll be in Russia next mid-month on behalf of the traditional Circle of Elders in the Indian nations of North America. He holds a master's degree in American history and museum technology. And today he proudly represents his people as one of the chiefs of the Turtle Clan of the Onondaga Nation. Chief Oren Lyons, his name is Joaquiso. I think I got it close. Oren Lyons.
The first sponsor that we called on last year was Phil Allen, when his wife Virginia was inducted into our Hall of Fame. Well, Phil again is a sponsor representing TV Guilfoyle and Associates, Inc. Phil, if you'd come forward to make the presentation to Oren Lyons.
make this brief. They told me they'd only have an hour and a half. And with all the things that you have accomplished, Oren, I can't do it in an hour and a half. So I'm just going to have to let you tell them. Oren, it's a privilege for me to introduce you to All-American lacrosse and so many other attributes. Oren, God bless you.
A lot of big people here. I have to pull this down. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here, and also the selection committee and the Hall of Fame, and certainly the sponsors. And maybe to talk a little bit about what happens to an Indian kid on the reservation, because that's where I grew up. My mother's over here on the right, my family, my friends. My son, my daughter. And over here on my left, Coach, who's still my coach, and a lot of the people here at the table interacted and somehow came together to this night. I had a long association with Normie Rothschild. He's the one that got me to paint. I sold him a painting for $5 over his counter at Normie's Hot Shop one night back in 1948, I think. Ada's there, she remembers, and Normie said, well, how many more can you paint? I said, well, how many more do you want? At $5 a shot, I think I did about 36 paintings for him. I think he had a good deal going, he knew that. Anyway, that got into a shop. It turned into the ringside, and through the magic of Mr. Simmons, Roy Simmons, somehow got Dean Hafner, who we heard about, with Lou Andreas and all of that. Somehow, Roy Simmons got me into Syracuse University. And in all that process of moving from a reservation into a university, it was quite a shock for me. It was a real culture shock. It was so much a shock that I left and I went back to the reservation. And pretty soon after that, Roy was on the reservation looking for me. And we have a pretty tight community, so when you're asking for someone, nobody ever knows who you're talking about. And so Roy was standing there. He says, well, I got to see him. He says, don't you know? He says, I'm the lacrosse coach at Syracuse University. He's playing for me. And they said, oh, he lives right there. He was standing in front of the house. So with that, I got to compete at Syracuse University and play with a lot of great players, not the least of which, of course, is Big Jim Brown. We had good seasons. Slugger, Roy Jr., ourselves. Well, we saw some good days at Syracuse. And previous to that, I was boxing quite a bit, and had met early on Carmen Basilio with Red Irwin, who's sitting over here. Been here a long time. We've been associated a long time. It's the area, it's the community. Everybody seems to be involved one way or the other. And if you're in sports, sooner or later you get to say hi. And so up through those times when I was scrapping as an amateur fighter at the Golden Gloves, when people can remember up at the Coliseum where they had two rings going at once, that so many fighters used to be, awful hard to find now. Pat knows about days like that. When there were 36 featherweights waiting to fight in the same night. You know, those nowadays you have to really look around to find the fighters. And in that moment, I think we should think about and support the kids that are putting on the gloves right now over in Korea.
and give them a shot of support because it's a tough business, you know. It's one-on-one, as you know. So on through that, we had some adventures and misadventures. Went on down to the Sugar Bowl with the boxing team, and I was the only guy that had a special mouthpiece, you know, to fight that night. And when Coach Simmons asked me where my mouthpiece was, it was back here in the reservation. And so we had this whole thing to do down there, and how we were going to get our mouthpiece from Onondaga to Louisiana with the fight coming up. Well, somehow we managed through the smoke signals, whatever it was, we finally got it down there. But anyway, through all that, great seasons at Syracuse. First undefeated lacrosse team. I was proud to be on that team. Proud of the coach, proud of the school. And from there on, of course, I had played box lacrosse and continued. And 63, had a son by the name of Rex, who happens to be sitting here now and is doing pretty well and scoring in lacrosse. It's a tradition. And we have put together a team called the Iroquois Nationals, which is going to compete in the 1990 World Games in Perth, Australia. Quite an undertaking, quite a chunk to bite off, but nevertheless, we'll be over there, and we'll be competing against Canada, U.S., Australia, and England, and the Iroquois. So we've moved into the international field, carrying lacrosse forward, because I think eventually lacrosse is going to be really, truly an international sport. It's been slow. We originated the game, taught people how to play it, and eventually got beat by the same people we taught. So all that, you know, has culminated in a night like this, which I do appreciate, and I certainly am honored to be seated with people of such great stature here. You know, I'm kind of still surprised, and of course, Lou has helped a great deal with that. We've been associated, and there's a lot to do. I mean, this is a good night and all, but when we leave, there's a lot to do that we should all think about for the next year, and to continue to keep Central New York, which is where we've originated, where the Onondaga Nation has always been, to keep it in as prestigious a way as it's been up to this point, and to carry that on, because we do have extraordinary people here. I believe that. And so with all of that, and with all of the good times that I've had as an athlete, and with all the great people that I've met through that, and with all of those athletes that don't get here, that I think maybe should have been here, but at least share, we always think of them. So to those teams and to those people, thank you.
The only athletic director Lemoyne College has ever had, 1946 to this very present. Came out of Canisius College, is in both theirs and Lemoyne's Hall of Fame. Gained honors with the Dolphins program as its head basketball coach from 1946 to 1973, with 21 seasons, a rather common and, how shall I say this, consistent occurrence. And a win over a favored bigger opponent. Every now and again we'll see a little bit of Boston College footage from the Tom Cooney years, until a lot of those folks just decided they didn't want to come to Lemoyne College and wind up being just another W for the Dolphin program. Boston College comes to mind, for example. His overall coaching record, 328 wins, 212 losses. In 1959, Tommy was honored as National Catholic College and University Coach of the Year after a typically solid Dolphin season. And since his retirement as head coach, he's overseen the growth of the entire program at Lemoyne College. We saw some shots of the entire complex of the campus, or most of it. Men's and women's sports we're talking. A hands-on sort of administrator. He's the guy I saw one day last spring or early summer, I think, helping slip those plexiglass panels into their appropriate slots in the new press box facility, part of the upgrading of the baseball program for head coach Dick Rockwell. And there he was, Tommy. He was hands-on. Most recently, of course, Tommy finished successfully a term as a member of the NC2A Rules and Infractions Committee. served with typical style and understatement, always letting it be known that he was more than just a casual observer. He is a doer. Thomas J. Niland, Jr.
Sponsorship of the induction of Tommy Niland is Merchants National Bank and Trust Company. And to make the presentation this evening is Peter Myers, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer.
Thanks very much. Good evening, friends. Sitting in the audience during most of these presentations, I had a couple of observations to make. One kind of contradicts what one of our speakers said this evening. I happen to be a Boston fan, and I'd bet on him. Number two, I think we have another celebrity here that isn't being honored, but I couldn't help thinking that our own Red Parton kind of looks like Wade Boggs.
Oh.
Kind of an inside joke for your out-of-towners. Slogan of the week is tear apart the terrapins. Good luck, Orange, this weekend. Tom Niland's been a fixture in Central New York community for some 50 years. I think his plus. I think his greatest contribution to all of us has been really his inspiration, guidance, and assistance he's given the many young people that have gone on to successes of their own. Tom, Merchants Bank is proud to sponsor your induction to the Syracuse Sports Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much. A young Wade Boggs. I know that Mr. Parton was a great athlete. He used to broadcast for us, and many times on the road trips, I know every plate he made in high school, Waterbury, Connecticut, all the errors. I ponder what getting up here means and what to say, and you work it all out, and you write it all down, and you throw it away and start over again. And it's very difficult to express one's feelings. You're up here amongst athletes that I have. Bill Dinnean I knew about before I came to Syracuse. I was an avid reader. And of course, my cherished friend Carmen Basilio, who just amazes you when you think of Carmen Basilio and what a great athlete. And here my name is on the plaque along with theirs, and it's a very humbling effect. You're either, as by an earlier description, because of your fame or your ability in athletics. I understand the athletic ability part. Well, I really don't. I understand the athletic ability part of Basilio and Shays, Seymour. I do know the athletic ability of Larry Costello, because when he was describing that little 98-pound player, I was sitting at his doorstep waiting to get him to college. I didn't see any other coaches there but me. So I knew in advance how good he was. And I was very sorry to have lost him. But he went on to a great career, and when you're part of that group, it's very rewarding. So why am I here? I didn't play well. I think I averaged 3 points a game or something. And I'm here because of other people. And I sincerely mean this. I'm here because I got other people to play. And I tried to encourage them to play, and I was able in some way to help them, to see that they got to college, to see that they made the best of their abilities, and I'm very proud of that fact. And I just can't go on to tell you in detail how much that would be. But if you do that, you must have help from other people. And I think that's a process that must take place. When I came here, when the college started, gentleman that was the first man on the list tonight that I had heard about, and when I went to see Lou Andreas, I found a man who not only who I knew about as a coach, I played against the university and knew of his greatness as a coach, but I found a man who his daughter described very eloquently, who was kind and considerate and helped Le Moyne College and helped me personally. And that's the kind of acquaintanceship that I received there. I found other men, Danny Bison, who had nothing to do with Le Moyne College. I used to live in Eastwood. He was a very personal friend and did many things to help us, my family, to be settled in Syracuse. So you can look at the records and the 300 some innings by Bill Dinnean, and you can look at the high scores and the championships, and all that means a great deal. But the real sincerity is that we are all in one group, and we're all working with one another, and we pick one another up, and the good person learns by his defeat and goes on. There's no purpose in athletics unless it's one of cooperation, of understanding, of beating somebody, shaking hands, of winning, of losing, and holding your head high to play again. And if I've been able to do that, I've been able to do that because of something that my family taught me and maybe God bestowed upon me, and I'm very thankful for it. I know that the other speakers have introduced their family, and I can't stress too much the family and how important it is to a coach that drives his car and leaves his wife home with 3 kids or 4 to go to Burlington, Vermont in a snowstorm and get beat and come back always in a very pleasant mood. Kids are always glad to see Dad, you know. So, and the children have been sick and up all night and so forth, so I can't express too much unless all this is done as the other speakers have done to my wife Phyllis and to my family, and if they would stand, I would appreciate it. Some of them are paying us back, in a sense. I heard we're going to go over and help one of our daughters take care of their kids for a while. So please accept my sincere thanks upon the feeling of all the people in Syracuse, New York, that have opened Le Moyne College with welcome arms, have encouraged us, people that have given us their players, their sons, their daughters. If I've played any role, I'm happy to play it, and I thank God that I've been able to play it. Thank you very much.
Pat Nappi. Say the name Pat Nappi in amateur boxing circles, and the 1984 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles will come up, so will the 76 games. He was head coach of the U.S. team, and what an experience in '84. The team racked up 9 gold medals. This was a group of outstanding individuals, so good that current undisputed heavyweight champ Mike Tyson couldn't make that team. Overseeing all this talent, Pat Nappi, who hooked up with the sport while in the military. Named All-Army coach in 1953, later coached the All-Service team, both here at home and around the world, really. 1970, he is named Coach of the Year nationally, first boxing coach to be so honored. Then he is chosen to coach the first AAU competition in Russia. And in 1976, he is named head coach of the U.S. Olympic team, one that included Sugar Ray Leonard and the Spinks brothers, among others. And but for the boycott in 1980, what a string of successes he might have put together. As it is, a total of 14 golds and 2 Olympics is rather an outstanding achievement. And he accomplished this with the usual distractions, the second guessing, the politics, you know the rest. He knows who he is, and we are proud to know him. He is Pat Nappi.
Sponsoring the induction of Pat Nappi is the United States Amateur Boxing Federation, and to make the presentation to Pat is Niagara District Secretary Debbie Fitzpatrick.
It's my honor to be here tonight to present this to Pat Nappi. There are a lot of people here tonight, as I look around, moms and dads, brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews. And you would not realize the extent in amateur boxing of what a family really means. And to amateur boxing, Pat Nappi is the dad. He is our dad. He has extended himself and his whole being to make sure that amateur boxing is what it should be. And in this Olympic year of 1988, with team turmoil over in Seoul right now, with all that they're going through, Pat has been through that before. He knows what it's all about. He has been with the team. He knows the team. And it is with honor that I present this award to him, his induction into the Syracuse Hall of Fame, from the USAABF and the Syracuse Friends of Amateur Boxing. We appreciate it.
Boy, being up here at this head table amongst these gentlemen is quite an act of following when they get through talking. But I can tell you this, it's been a real honor being up here, and I'd like to thank the committee of the Hall of Fame and these distinguished guests at this table. Being here is a real honor. I mean, whenever I receive an award from my hometown, means more to me than you can really believe. I've received a few honors, but this is much bigger and better. What I accomplished, I'd like to thank my family. I have my grandsons and my sons and my friends sitting at the table over here. And will you stand up? Of course, my brothers, they helped me out a lot. But the best coach in the world, I found, is my wife. No matter what I did, she was behind me all the way. She's the one that really pushed me. She's the one that, when I wanted to let down, she's the one that says, no, you got to go through with it. Without her, I don't know what I would have done. Really, she is the heart and soul of my boxing career. Well, with all this controversy going on, I'd like to go back in 1976. Where I had my first run-in with Mr. Howard Costello. This particular evening, I had two boxers boxing, one boy by the name of Randolph and another one by the name of Leonard. They were boxing in the evening. And they both won, and they both won handily, and I was really happy. So going back to our quarters, which was an apartment. And in this apartment, there was 15 people had to live in this two-room apartment. That was the whole squad. That was the boxers, the coaches, and the manager. We had cots all over the place. Well, anyway, when we got to this room that evening, I saw everybody huddled in a corner with their heads down. And I didn't know what was going on, so I asked one of the boxers, in fact, one of the Spink brothers, I said, what's going on, Mike? He says, well, they didn't like what you said to Howard Costello. I said, what did I tell Howard Costello? He says, well, it came over the air tonight that you brought Randolph, that you said that you brought Randolph just along for the ride, that he didn't have a Chinaman's chance. I says, he says, I says that? He says, yeah. And everybody was really mad. So I went downstairs to the press room, to the Olympic press room, and I talked to Bob Paul, who at that time was the head of our newspapers, Olympic papers. I said, Bob, how can I get a hold of Howard Costello? So we tried calling here and calling there after I explained to him what was going on, and we couldn't contact him. So finally Bob says, well, let's call up his boss. So we called him up, and we explained to him, at least I explained to him, I says, here I am trying to build up a morale, and your people are tearing it down. And so he finally agreed that to send Mr. Costello back or to the Olympic Village to our room. So at 9 o'clock the next morning, here comes Howard. And so he got all the boxers together, including the coaches and the manager, and he says, Nappi didn't say that. So we want you to know that it did not come from Nappi. But it did come from a member of your team, who at that time happened to be the manager, Mr. Schwartz, who related this story to him, and Howard says that I had said it. Well, anyway, that cleared it up, and boys all got back together, and everything came out fine. But these are the kind of things that are happening today with the boxing team over in Korea now. Our coaches are capable. They're all capable. They're all good coaches. And to prove it, even this evening as we're sitting here, they have 9 boxers in the quarterfinal. So they must be doing something right. So again, I want to thank you all and thank the committee for everything they've done.
Thank you, Red. Good evening, everyone. Your sponsors, Larry, are Brazil Chevytown, Jay's Village Chevrolet, Dave Ball's Chevrolet, and East Syracuse Chevrolet. They call themselves the Syracuse Heart of New York. And how appropriate that name is, because nobody has ever played with the heart that Larry Costello has coached with the heart, with the heart that Larry Costello has, and has devoted his career and his life to this community. Larry, on behalf of the Chevy dealers, thank you very much for everything you've done for us.
Thank you very much. As a 98-pound high school freshman with a goal being a professional basketball player from a school of about 27 in my graduating class, playing 6-man football, no one thought that my goal was realistic. But somehow, some way, it didn't materialize. And beyond all expectations, I would never believe that I would be inducted in the Syracuse Sports Hall of Fame. I've had a lot of opportunities during the course of my life. I think I've been able to take advantage of them. Started out with Dr. Sheldon, my high school coach at Manoa. I went on to Niagara University under Taps Gallagher. I was very small. When I graduated from Niagara, I was drafted by the Philadelphia Warriors. I couldn't believe it. Scout never approached me, never talked to anybody. I was walking across campus one night going to supper, and a fellow student said, "You're just drafted by the Philadelphia Warriors." I couldn't even believe it. So shortly afterwards, I was contacted, sure enough, as a second-round draft pick. Well, I didn't know what to do. I wanted to play pro basketball, but I wasn't sure whether I really had the ability and the size to do it. So I called my mother and asked her for some direction, and I was in science, so she directed me to the Buffalo Dental School. Well, I went to Buffalo Dental School for about a month, and I was over shooting baskets at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I called my mother and said, I got to call Eddie Gottlieb down in Philadelphia and see if it's still possible to come to their training camp. So I did, and he says, yes, I'd like to have you come down. So bing, I left dental school and down I went. Never know whether I'd make it or not. But he gave me the opportunity, and probably one of my biggest moments in my lifetime, my dream come true, I made the team. I think my mother probably heard my heartbeat. I couldn't wait to get to the phone and tell her I made the team. Excited to play for pay, I couldn't even believe it. And there wasn't much money, believe me, not like there is today. but nevertheless, I was given the opportunity. Shortly after, I was inducted in the Army. In 1958, I was sitting at supper table, had my car packed. After supper, I was about ready to head back for Hershey, PA for my third season in the NBA. The phone rang at supper time. It was Danny Biazone. Danny says, "We just brought your contract. You're now a member of the Syracuse Nats." So, baby, I was happy playing before my home team, home fans. Probably the turning point of my career. I played for Paul Seymour, who was here tonight. He gave me an opportunity. He put me in the starting lineup. I remained there for a long time. I was not about to give it up. Paul taught me a lot. Taught me how to grab people's pants. Taught me how to fight a little bit. You all know Paul Seymour, what a competitor he was. Then I had a chance to play with Dolph Shays, both inductees last year. Of course, when you played with Dolph, I had to develop a quick shot. If I didn't get a quick shot off, Dolph was coming running for the ball. So I developed a quick set because of Dolph. I have some great memories. I'd just like to share a couple of them with you. I'm a perfectionist. Sometimes that probably could be bad. I hated to lose. I hated to play bad. Didn't want anyone to out hustle me. I was always in great shape. And I always worried about every single damn game. You know, in those days, we had 1-year contracts, maybe. Didn't play good, they get rid of you, somebody else would come in. We didn't have the long-term contracts like they have today. 80 or 100 people playing basketball in the whole United States. So the competition was pretty tough to hold your job and play good so you get a contract the next year. But anyhow, I did do pretty good. And then in 1963, it's the year I got married, we were on our honeymoon in Bermuda. Came back from our honeymoon, and the Syracuse Nats franchise has been sold. I had no rumors about it. I had nothing. Could not believe it. So, of course, I started out in Philadelphia. Then I returned back to Philadelphia. Jerry Walser, who did my tax work for me, was a general manager of the Syracuse Nats. He never mentioned anything to me. Totally in shock. I think one of my toughest assignments over the years was negotiating with Danny Biazone. We all know Danny, what a great guy he was. And I love him. Super nice man, honest man, trustworthy man, let you play. But I tried to get $500 out of him one year, an increase in pay for my next contract. I don't know how many trips I made from Manoa to the Eastwood Sports Center. I think about that and all the gas I put in that car, I think I ended up losing money. And when it was all said and done, he says, "Larry, I'll give you the $500. When I walked out of his office, I felt so bad, I felt like I stole something from him. But that was Danny Biazone. And then, of course, after playing for 12 years, once again, I got lucky. With only 1 year of coaching experience, I was given the coaching job of the Milwaukee Bucks. And in 3 years, we won the World's Championship. Not because I was a great coach, because you got to have players to win. And we drafted Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is still playing today. Unbelievable. Great athlete, great person. I have all the respect in the world for him. Then we got Oscar Robertson our third year. 2 great pros. I had the opportunity to coach those guys. 2 legends, playing with Dolph and Paul Ayres and Seymour and all these great people. Only through sports. In fact, I was at Moyne College for a while for Tommy Niland. And what a great career he has had. And I love to have played for Tommy, another competitor. I've been lucky. I've always played for competitors, winners, guys that really want to give an effort. What more can you say? I just wish my mother and dad could be here tonight. They are great fans, great athletes. I know I inherited some of their genes. I know. My mother, she would scream and holler. Remember one time we were in the Holiday Festival, at the NIT, in New York, and they introduced me, Larry Costello, starting guard. My mother got up and said, "His name isn't Costello, it's Costello." So she wasn't afraid of anything, no matter where she was or what the setting. But they all supported me. And what more can you do? We had a great relationship with my family. Here tonight, my brother and sister, my brother's state trooper, and my 2 sisters, I'd like to have them stand up. kept me posted on developments all the time. What can you say? Just a nice relationship. In 1963, after one of the ball games, I was out celebrating, having a drink after a big win. I met a nice young lady, a nurse, Crowe Serving Hospital, and what a find that was. Most supportive of me in Milwaukee. She never missed a game in 9 years, raised 4 lovely daughters. I've been a lucky person. I've seen a lot of athletes go down the tubes because of their wife and their involvement. Very supportive, never any questions asked, come and go, do your job. Because of that, I've enjoyed my life, been able to provide a good living for them. And I'd like to have my wife Barbara stand and my 4 daughters, Leslie, Pam, Colleen, and Amy. Stand up. I just want to say thanks for selecting me. This is really an honor. And boy, I think of the Nats, I think of the fans, I think of how rabid they were and the teams that want to come in here and play us. And we felt that we owned that place. I have great memories. Dolph Shazy was my bodyguard. Remember one time we were playing in a little suburb of St. Louis. And I got in a little scuffle with Cliff Hagan. And shortly after, there was a free throw situation. Dolph was standing on the line next to Cliff Hagan. Next thing you know, a punch was thrown. He hit Cliff Hagan right in the eye. His eye went up like a balloon. The next thing, he was on the bench. But that's the way we were. Tough guys. Great experience. I got all kinds of memories, but I ain't got enough time to share them. All I can do is say thank you. I'm happy. I'm excited. One of the joyous moments of my life. Thank you.
Next on our list, Alberta E. Crowe. You may recognize some of the folks and some of the situations in our sports slideshow that we have to highlight our inductee, Alberta Crowe. She moved in select circles. She had truly an international reputation in bowling circles, representing our Central New York area in first-class fashion. That commitment sparked 4 decades, starting with the Women's International Bowling Congress in 1939, a tour of duty, so to speak, that would last 42 years, finishing as president from 1960 to 1981. In 1950, she was elected president of the National Bowling Council. In fact, she served several presidencies, including that of the Bowlers Building Corporation. Her roots are in the Syracuse Women's Bowling Association, as well as the State Association. She's a WIBC Hall of Famer, and in 1981, she was honored with the impressive John O. Martino Award for outstanding contributions to the sport of bowling. Indeed, when she had begun her affiliation with the WIBC, membership was in the hundreds, and when she finished her association with that group, the numbers were and are in the millions. And in typical Alberta Crowe fashion, the lady who gave so much to the sport is still giving. The Alberta E. Crowe Star of Tomorrow Award is given to a deserving bowler, a young bowler, judged to be a potential great one, as was, as is, the late Alberta E. Crowe.
And sponsoring Alberta's induction into the Hall of Fame is the Brunswick Bowling Corporation, represented this evening by Phil DiMartino, who we'd like to have come front and center, and accepting for Alberta is her sister, Barbara Rett.
Thank you. Barbara, on behalf of Brunswick, it's a privilege to present this award to you in memory of Alberta Crowe for her many, many years of dedication and service to the bowling industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're very proud of this great honor as Alberta is inducted into the Syracuse Sports Hall of Fame. She was very proud of Syracuse as she was a native, grew up here, would never leave it, always wanted to call Syracuse her home. This is also a great tribute to share with past and present leaders and members of the Syracuse Women's Bowling Association, the New York State Women's Bowling Association, and the Women's International Bowling Congress, and to all the men's bowling associations for their support and confidence in Alberta throughout the years. In going through some of Alberta's papers, it was interesting to note where she wrote on April 5th, 1942, "What is my ambition?" And then she went on and wrote, "Hoping to promote bowling and to help build a firm foundation for the great American game of 10 pins. Her dream was realized." She worked many years in working with Frank Baker. He's past executive secretary of the American Bowling Congress. They worked many years to try to get bowling recognized by the Olympic committees. Finally, through the efforts of Alberta and Frank in the early years, and then followed by others, in the last few years, Jack Reichert, chairman of the executive office of Brunswick Corporation, broke the barrier, and at the 1988 Seoul Olympics, bowling has been recognized. It was an exhibition sport, and in 1992 in Spain, bowling will be a medal sport. But it still takes a lot of work and a lot of time to keep it a medal sport. And so it is, Alberta was not an outstanding bowler, but she was an outstanding administrator for the sport of women's bowling. Her ambition she wrote about in 1942 has been realized. Promotion of the sport of bowling, a lifetime sport. She was a very highly respected and gracious lady, and she was my sister. Thank you.
Inductee, class of 1988, Greater Syracuse Sports Hall of Fame, Louis P. Andreas. And check your video screens. We should have some video upcoming any second now about Lou Andreas. We'll get a little bit of highlights about Lou Andreas. Lou Andreas was destined to carve out quite a career at Syracuse University, where he graduated, returning 3 years later in 1924 to stay until stepping down as director of athletics in 1964. He had taken the job in 1937. In between, initially, he had made his mark as a coach. 355 wins, 133 losses, heading the Orange basketball team from 1924 through 1950. Included in that, of course, the national championship year, 1925-26. While at Syracuse, he witnessed a transition of the athletic program and the facilities. Archbold Gym on campus, Archbold Stadium next door were, of course, the focal points, and no doubt the unfortunate fire in the gym complex helped move things along to the Manley Fieldhouse era, which dawned in 1962. Lou Andreas gets credit also for helping move the Intercollegiate Rowing Association's annual regatta here starting in 1952. And he's a Helms Foundation Collegiate Hall of Famer as well. For those of us who knew Lou Andreas in those retirement years, we call up an image of the senior athletic statesman, really, seemingly always proper, a class act, a person who was very much in touch with what was going on with the Orange athletic programs. Louis P. Andreas. Thank you.
Sponsors of the award to Louis P. Andreas are Charlie Lee, Joe Spector, Tracy Ferguson, Charles Close, William Tully, and Nick Coyne, all very well-known names in Syracuse. Making the presentation will be Horace Landry, and accepting for her dad will be Betty Kurzweil. Horace Landry.
Betty, it's a great pleasure to have this honor to present the picture and the citation of your great dad. I knew him through the years, and I used to sneak through the stadium to see the games when he was coaching back in 1927, 28, and 29. and he had a pretty good record. He was over 500 in football. Of course, he was recognized probably more largely for his basketball, the national champs. But Lou Andreas was a great gentleman, a great fisherman. And I remember the fish he used to bring back. And he would at least debone it and get it ready for the plate, you know. I would never accept any fish unless it was ready to eat. In 1927 and 28, 29, the 3 years of his football coaching, I remember his games with Penn State. They never scored more than 9 points against them. And in 27, it was a 6-9 game that Penn State won. And then we tied them. Your father at least believed in ties when he couldn't win. And we tied them at 6-6. And then the third year, we lost 4-6. I don't know how we ever got the 4 points. Must have been 2 safeties. Lou was a great gentleman. I remember his fishing trips with our Chancellor Emeritus, Bill Tolley, and with Bill Hafer, who was our Director of Admissions and later became President of Curry College, now gone and left our ways, and Julie Reichel, who was our former trainer. And the 4 of them constituted a great fishing team. And so I know this dinner has to end the same night that it begins, and I could talk all night about Lou Andreas, a great friend. The only time I ever heard him profanity was when I gave him his tax return and he had to sign it, and he said, "What the," I won't quote it, "I got to pay all this money to Uncle Sam." Betty, you have come from Wyoming to receive this award on behalf of your father, and I am honored, and it is one of my cherished moments to present it to you.
Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure and a privilege for me to be here this evening, and thank you very much for inviting me. Some of you knew me during my early years in Syracuse. I went to grade school, high school, and then college. I now live in a log home neath the beautiful Tetons in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Many of you knew my parents. Most of you knew my father. And if you knew him as a firm, decisive, kind, honest, and quiet man with a wealth of experience in living. To some of his colleagues, he was known as Silent Lou, but believe me, he could create a noise and an effect when he chose to do so. He was a good teller of tales, and perhaps the story I enjoyed hearing the most was one he recounted to my husband. He and his team were in Nebraska. They were the underdogs, and the only apparent chance of scoring lay in their superb quarterback. Lou figured if he could fire him up, they'd have at least one touchdown. They were in sort of a dugout locker in a room beneath the stands with one very small, low steel door in the concrete wall. Lou closed it, and for a few minutes he worked the team over as he had never done before, and they were spitting fire. "Now," he roared, flinging open the steel door, "let's go." The quarterback slapped his helmet under his arm and, leading his team, charged toward the door. As he enthusiastically leaped up and forward, he smacked his head on the door frame and knocked himself out. Needless to say, they lost the game that day. It was an experience that Lou never forgot. He would later chuckle as he recounted the disastrous episode. Yes, he'd sometimes say, it's tough when your bread and butter depend on the ratio of wins over losses, especially if you lose a game or two by 1 point only. Dad could always cope. He worked hard. He remained optimistic. He loved people, and he loved his work. Someone wrote that greatness is the ability to serve others. If this is so, then Lou was great, because I saw him serve not only his family, but numerous individuals, many of whom are here today. And in serving them, he served the many teams that he coached and directed. Being successful in life requires that one have a goal and the tenacity to keep it in view, no matter how difficult. The odds were against Lou from the beginning, as he experienced a most terrible burning accident as a youth that created immense physical obstacles for him, but he overcame them. And this perhaps gave him the know-how and experience to help others. When the poet Stephen Vincent Benet wrote the following poem, and I quote, 6'1" in his stocking feet, the lanky man, knotty and tough as a hickory nail, whose hands were always too big for the white kid gloves, whose coat was a coonskin sack of dry, tall tails, whose weathered face was as homely as a plowed field. He could well have been writing of my father. Dad's presence always filled whatever space he entered. As a being, he was big, and he was beautiful. I thank you for this great honor you are bestowing on my father. And I know he would have accepted it modestly if he were here, because he was a humble man. Were he here today, he would be proud, too, of the recent achievements at Syracuse. He departed this world sitting in his favorite lounge chair, watching the Orangemen in action. If there is football and basketball on the other side, I imagine Lou is there opening a door and encouraging some team to let's go. But I am very sure, based on experience, he's prefacing that order with, watch your heads as you go through that door, fellas.